Agnes von Heidelberg.
And I'm Anne von Hoosbergen.
And we're members of the Society for Creative Anachronism. And today we're going to teach you how to do dyeing on the log. I want to make clear from the beginning, this is not research I have done. It is a technique I have learned and I am happy to share. I learned it from Mistress Willow McMurradag, who lives in Ansteora. So, Mistress Willow taught me out at Gulf Wars, and she had a lovely setup that was made from an old tent. I have my lovely dye room space, so I asked my apprentice brother to build me something I could use inside that didn't need stakes and ropes to hold it up. So this lovely piece of PVC is our log. Traditionally it would be made of wood. Also, this technique is only documented to late within the SCA period. I believe the 1400s is what I recall from the documentation. However, I use it even for Viking era cloth dyeing because it is unlikely they would have done whole cloth dyeing in period. Earlier than that, they would have simply dyed their yarn. However, if I want to dye a garment, I have to do whole cloth dyeing because I don't weave. So today we are actually going to be working with a small piece rather than a full yardage. This is a piece of silk that we already mordanted. It is not very wide. So Anne, if you want to go over to the other side, we'll get it all unfolded. It's always important to pre-wet your fabrics, otherwise they will not absorb the color evenly. And where is my yellow stick? There it is. My dye is very hot, so I'm going to be careful about how much I put my hand in there. And we're going to carefully try to keep air bubbles out of the fabric as it goes into the dye pot. If this were a bigger piece of cloth or you know, just anything more than what it is, I would be using a much bigger dye pot. The bubbles, on dyes like indigo, the bubbles will actually mean that you would not get dye. In dyes like this, it's more just about reducing spots that don't get evenly dyed. So, takes a little while, especially with 4 yards. This is actually a piece of trim that I am dyeing for a Viking outfit. This particular dye, which is Fustic, is a yellow, is not something used by the Vikings. However, most of the silk we have found in Viking graves and in the Viking remains that we have seen appears to be imported. It doesn't look like they ever dyed their own silk. So if I was dyeing wool, then I would want to work with a known Viking period dye. But since I'm working with some silk that would have been an import, we will use Fustic. Now, this is going to be fun because it's so hot. I'm trying to find the end that went in first and pull it out. And oh my goodness, this is really hot. Be careful, Anne. Okay. So, this is not going to be as significant on this particular piece, but when you're pulling it out, you want to smooth out as it's getting pulled. This helps ensure that any irregularities in the dye or any dye materials get, you know, smoothed out so you don't have splotchiness. This is really the key to not having a splotchy result. This does take 2 people. This is why Anne is here. If I were working on a bigger piece of fabric, we would need even more. This is going to be a little bit unwieldy for 2 of us for this length, but since it's this narrow, it's not a big problem. And then I have done 15 yards of 45-inch wide fabric before, outside, because you cannot stretch that much out in here, with 4 helpers. It's not fun, but it can be done. So keep pulling, and then, now see, this is a nice smooth piece of silk, so this is actually really easy. Anything with significant texture, it gets harder, and I'm still working on my wools. So then, if we were working with indigo, I would probably flip this around and smooth out the underside as well, because of the nature of indigo. But since I'm just working with this Fustic and it's this nice narrow piece of cloth, I'm going to take the end that came out last and put it back in. This is a nice potent dye bath, so I probably will not need to do too many dips to get a nice color. But it's not unusual to need to do 5 or more dye baths. Let's try and get this a little bit. Sorry. It's okay. This is such a nice, yeah. You definitely want to try to keep it from twisting too much when you're working with bigger pieces of fabric. Again, there's a lot of allowances we can make for working with such a narrow piece of fabric. So we're going to put it back in. Honestly, this one will probably just do 2 dips because the dye bath is pretty potent, and it's a just narrow piece of cloth. A wider piece of cloth, you have to work harder to get good, even coverage. And trying really hard. I am doing a very bad job of keeping my air bubbles out of this. And in something like indigo, keeping air bubbles out would be huge, because the more oxygen you put in, the less your indigo is going to work. Which is part of why I just chose Fustic for this video. Sometimes I have been known to leave the fabric in for a little bit, especially as it starts to cool, because dye always works better when it's hotter, but that also makes it harder to work with. Whew. Steaming up my glasses here. Okay. And when you're working on a really wide piece of fabric, this smoothing action is a really big shoulder workout. So guys, I think I'm going to be quite happy with this color. Always remember, when it's coming fresh out of the dye vat, it is about 2 shades darker than it will be in the end. I'm actually going to split this in half once it dries, so I can over dye some of it with indigo, and then I will have a piece of yellow trim and a piece of green trim. So that is the log dyeing method, and I want to say a lovely thank you to our video man, Taco. Say hi, Taco. And thanks for watching.